Welcome to this week's episode of the Evolve to Succeed podcast. Got something slightly different for you this week compared to our usual episodes. Today I've got David Mutton, my colleague at Evolve, talking to me and us having an active discussion off the cuff around how to create a shared vision within your business, as well as giving some practical hints and tips. During the course of this conversation, as you'll hear, we will share with you some of our own practical experiences. So please, I hope you enjoy the episode, and if you do, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Evolve to Succeed podcast on whatever your favourite channel is. Thank you. David, my fellow colleague at Evolve.
Hi, Warren.
Good to have you on the podcast and good to have this discussion. Doing a kind of different kind of episode today. You and I are going to discuss a topic, and actually one of the themes and situations we find quite a lot is talking about that vision, that purpose to a business. And you recently, David, wrote a blog which people can find on your LinkedIn profile of why every business needs a shared vision.
I did, and I think in my work with Evolve and experience, it's just so important to just understand kind of what you're trying to achieve ultimately. And
you find with the businesses that you work with, and you're very much usually in that kind of startup, early stages of growth phase, that businesses even in those stages are lacking that kind of shared vision.
I think at the very beginning, the vision's actually really quite obvious. You know, often it's somebody saying, do you know what? I believe that I can make a difference. I can improve the quality. I can give people better outcomes, and they are so passionate about that. Sometimes they don't lack a shared vision at all.
Yeah,
well, the opposite.
I might challenge that. I always talk about those early stage businesses, and I look at my businesses I've been involved in. You definitely have this as the individual or founder or co-founders. You have this focus, passion, and belief, don't you?
You do.
But I wonder how many of us actually share that with the team. So I think there might be a difference here between that having a vision and a purpose and a why in the Simon Sinek kind of world. But do we share it? And do they share it with their team and those that are going to help them on that early stages of the journey?
I think you're right. I think obviously in the very early stage they may not have a team, but perhaps even more important is the people that may become their customers. Yeah. You know, those people where if you were to sit them down in the earliest days and say, like, why are you doing this? You know, what's this all about? Just as a very, you know, in my role as an advisor, perhaps they'd very clearly tell me. But if I was to say, well, are you going to do that to your potential customer?
You know, you're going to share that with them.
You're going to share it with them. They'd be a bit nervous about that. I'd be like, well, no, because I'm just going to talk about the product or the service that I offer and how much it costs. And
and I think it's one of those areas, whatever size you are, if you're an owner-managed and entrepreneurial business, when you share the belief that you have, that vision that you have, and your kind of what good looks like with your customers, with your suppliers, with your team, we'll talk about the benefits of doing that, then you do really get that engagement and you stand out from the competitors. And for a lot of our clients, their competitors are large corporates, PLCs, which clearly have some benefits and advantages to them. But I think one of the benefits is that there is this passion and vision behind an owner-managed business.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, obviously, you know, before my time working at Evolve, I was involved with a business that did school trips.
Yeah.
Okay. And we used to take people kayaking and paddleboarding and things like that. But when you walked out the office, you came up some stairs, and when you went down the stairs, there was a very deliberate poster on the top of the stairs, and it had two girls who were on a school trip with their arms around each other. Okay. And it didn't say anything about the activities that we actually did.
Yeah.
Didn't talk about anything like that, because that was the vision. The vision was to connect human beings together, was to really get people to believe what it was all about.
Yeah.
You know, it was kayaking, it was that was the product, but fundamentally it was something much more important, and that was the vision that hopefully everybody felt.
Yeah.
And I think that's important in business.
No, definitely. And I think what's quite interesting, isn't it, when we'll talk about how maybe you can reset that vision or form the vision, and how do you communicate it, and how do you then feed back against it, and all of those things, I'm sure, during the course of this conversation. But if you then talk about the slightly larger business that may have started with that vision, that focus, passion and belief in my language, but businesses do lose that energy sometimes, or that sense of direction along the way, don't they?
Yeah, I believe so. I guess you become very much part of just, sometimes you've started this business, you've grown it, and then you're almost doing the day-to-day stuff, the management, the leadership, and you perhaps can forget what comes next or what you might be trying to achieve. And I know you often ask a question about, what good looks like. It's something that you do quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the best question you can ask an owner of a business is, what does good look like to you? Okay. And it's surprising how many people that have perhaps been in business 10, 15 years can't answer that question. And I suppose a lot of the work we do around the strategic advisory sessions about getting people to focus on where they've been, where they are, and where they want to go is really about resetting that vision and being able to answer the question, this is what good looks like.
It sometimes people can feel like a bit of a victim in their own business.
And a prisoner, nearly.
Yeah, and they somehow need to find that place where they go, no, it's okay to talk about what I want to do.
Yeah.
If your business or you're leading that business, shouldn't it be fine to say, look, this is what I want to go? And I mean, I know, coming back to your point more about what good looks like, I think I've heard you describe it so much more than just profit or loss or turnover.
Yeah, it's definitely far more than that, isn't it? Because I think so to pick up on a couple of those things, I think a business has to serve the owners and the stakeholders. And so many times you get to that place, and I've been there, where you're serving the business rather than it serving you. And as you go through that process and you start to think about why that has happened, you realise you've lost that kind of focus on all the other things in life that are important. And definitely, if we start, and when we talk about the metrics, I don't think the metrics need to be financial typically. And I've got some good examples of that from my own experiences, which we'll perhaps share later on in the conversation. So when you run the accelerator, you run some growth groups, the work that you're doing, what's your advice when you do come across somebody that hasn't got that shared vision as to how do they go about creating it?
Well, I think the first point to say is that perfectionism can kill vision.
Yeah.
People are like, you've got to be perfect. I've got one opportunity to go and tell my team or my people that this is the way I see the business going. And I think the realities with vision, and perhaps why people sometimes fear them, is they want it to be perfect. Whereas I question whether that is possible to be perfect.
Yeah.
Clearly you do want to have a well thought through, constructed kind of concept, ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the question around how do you go about achieving that, I think the first point, if you're just an owner or a director who owns the business, you're on your own, I think finding somebody who you trust, you value, has got sufficient background and experience to just talk these things through, is a really good starting point.
Yeah.
Because conversation usually leads you to the next stages, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I do. I think it has to start from the top. It has to start with the owners of the business working out, I suppose, what does good look like? And I try and answer that question, what does good look like for them? And it needs to start with that place of making sure that there is something in place that they understand, that fits their purpose, that they can share and communicate. The piece I think sometimes is missing, and I see missing, is the plan that supports that. And therefore sometimes you say about, does it need to be fully joined up? No. But if you're going to start communicating it and sharing it, you've got to show at least an element of a path and a route to achieving it.
I think you're right, because, going back to the perfectionism versus just coming up, clearly if you go to your team and you don't seem to have any idea, or and you're just a bit lost, then that can have negative impact in your business. Well, even the owner doesn't really know
what we're doing,
what we're doing, and actually he's seeking or she's seeking all of the answers. And clearly you do need to think carefully about how you build this up. And I mean, we keep coming back to that question about what good looks like. It's a good question. It's an excellent question. And I think, what type of clients do we want to work with here? What benefits are we really trying to provide people? What do we want to do for our people? Whether that's financial, whether that's something slightly softer in terms of benefits we provide, or, just really understanding what good looks like.
And that's the process we do go through when we do the strategic advisory. Is we do, for an established business, which is more the element that where I work, is we'll talk about, what was that original focus, passion, belief? Why? What were they aiming for? What were they looking to achieve when they started the business? And then we start to talk about where they are now, and part of that is a discussion around, what's their market like now? What's their ideal client? What's their positioning? Where would they? And then we talk about where they'd like to be. And I think sometimes when you're talking about vision, it gets very esoteric very quickly, with no sense of reality. And I get that. I can see you can set these big, hairy, scary goals that you don't know how you're going to get to. But for me, it's always got to have, in an owner-managed business, there's got to be an element of reality to it. And the element of reality is the original why, where we are now, and where's our market trend, customers, suppliers, where can they help take us?
You just said the word like hairy, scary.
Yeah.
Like, does vision have to be hairy, scary?
Yeah. See, this is going to sound very lacking ambition. I don't think it necessarily does, because I think this comes back to the business serving the owner. And there is some people out there that start businesses and they've got amazing ideas, an amazing drive, an amazing ambition, and they might want to change the world. But I think there's a whole piece out there on social media, and we can talk about that, and everything that happens in the world can be blamed on social media. But in this case, I think it can. Where some people starting business think that because they're going to start a business, they've got to have something that's big, hairy, scary to aim towards. And we know the reality of it. We've both started businesses. We started businesses to feel more financially secure, to look after clients in a better way. For me, it was looking after, treating my team as individuals. Now that they were fundamental principles that were part of the vision, but I didn't ever say I wanted to create the number one accountancy firm in the world, that
the one-stop shop
that nobody else would need to use, that would only use technology and do all of that. Fundamentally what I was doing wasn't rocket science, but I wanted to do it in my way. My vision was to do it differently.
Well, most businesses do the same thing that other businesses do.
Yeah.
But they innovate and they create networks and they take great customer
They
customer
have a
experience.
nuance on it that gives them a niche and a position in the market.
Of course.
And I think if you go from the principle that every vision has to be big, hairy, scary, you actually don't get to the reality sometimes. And I really admire the people that are big picture thinkers, that have that intellect to see something in the world that nobody else sees and to go for it. I love that. And I love, you do come across those individuals, and when you get to talk to them, it does give you energy and you get a buzz from it. But I think that's probably 5% of business owners, if that. And the reality is, if you're starting a business, I'm going to say, the listeners are going to get bored of this, aren't they? And those watching, what does good look like for you? And how are you going to be different? How are you going to be unique? What's your niche going to be? And I think that's really important. That's the reality of life.
I completely agree. And I think, going back to the original question that you asked about kind of how do you go about this process, almost, start a vision. And I said, well, you could speak to someone external, perhaps.
Yeah.
Clearly there may be 2 or 3 directors. Maybe there'll be some senior members of the team that you really trust. And of course, this is not a process that you do in isolation, because further down the line, and I guess we'll come on to that, this is something that gets shared. It's something that has to be shared. And there are so many benefits of doing that. But you work it through, don't you? And at some point, you then share it with the team.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think you've got to go through that process. And what you've also got to remember with the more, if you're a growing business that's been established for a period of time, and definitely if you've got multiple founders, owners, then at that point, 10, 15 years into your journey, you've grown, it's like any relationship. You start to grow apart. Your lives go slightly different ways. So it's then really important to check in with each other and go, is this what we want? What do we want to achieve now? Has it changed from when we founded and reset? And I've got a great example of this and a discussion that I facilitated, which was two individuals, completely different personalities, started a business together, were really successful from raw startup to £12 million of turnover, and they got on well, they complemented each other, all of those kind of things were completely different. And I started to have conversations with them to try and reset where they were heading and what does good look like. And initially, they both said, I want to sell the business. And they'd been talking to each other about selling the business. But once I got them in a room together and just facilitated that open dialogue and conversation with them, it soon came transparent neither wanted to sell the business. But because of that bond they had, one was thinking, well, Bob wants to sell the business. So actually, I'm going to support Bob and say I want to sell the business. Bob sat there thinking, Sue wants to sell the business. So do you know what? We'll sell the business. And fundamentally, neither of them, it was the last thing they wanted to do, but they weren't talking about where they were going, what vision they had, and what was next. And I know that's a slightly different strategic decision to setting vision, but it's the best example I can probably get of if you don't talk, you don't facilitate these discussions, and you just let life roll, then you can end up in a place you completely didn't intend to.
Hi, I'm Amy from Evolve, and before we continue the conversation, I wanted to take a moment to talk about how Evolve can help you and your business. Evolve are dedicated to supporting businesses through every stage of their journey. Whether you're just starting out, looking to grow, or preparing for an exit, we're here to help. One of our services we provide here at Evolve is growth and business advice, advising and supporting you to help develop an effective growth strategy for your business. You may be facing challenges and opportunities with strategy and positioning, business planning, finance and funding, leadership and succession, and your business growth. You feel like you need practical support, help and guidance from an experienced advisor. We will provide you with tailored advice, practical actions which can be implemented into your business, then be on hand as a sounding board, meeting with you regularly to ensure that you stay on track and you achieve your ideal outcomes. Visit our website, book in a free call with one of our advisors to discuss in more detail. All info can be found in the show notes. And now back to the show.
We've talked about maybe how you could sort of set that vision, and I think it is about dialogue. I think you can put some structure to it. I think that can be reflecting, as I say, on where you've been and what you've done. I think it is about analysing where you are today, all of those segments, your capacity, your infrastructure, your positioning, your ideal client. What does your supplier base look like? Where are you financially? And then from that base, using those things to then aid a kind of position of where do you want to take it? What's next? But formulating the plan and sharing the plan and communicating the plan is probably the next challenge, isn't it, David?
It is, yeah. And communication is best done when it's simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
And there is an ability to make eye contact at times and to do all of those things that I think humans appreciate.
Yeah.
We grow up with understanding and talking about communication. And therefore, when you think about how this might be done, whether it's that meeting where you pull everyone in for a surprise meeting, or you share much more information in advance. I think depending on the exact business and this type and whatnot, but fundamentally you are just thinking about how people are going to receive it. You want people to associate with those words, don't you? And sometimes emotions, see how people really feel, and that's kind of crucial. And I think it's not just the words, is it? It's how it might be presented. I see people writing really long business plans, which no one ever looks at.
No.
Now, what does actually the company vision look like?
Yeah.
Do you get a designer to do it? Is it clear as day? Is it on the wall? And it's nice. It's nice to look at. It makes sense. It's easy.
Yeah.
I mean, the businesses that we work with, that's what works.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 slides in a PowerPoint or something, or
definitely,
or just a big A3 piece of paper that's been designed and sums up what actually good looks
Taking
like.
that vision, transferring it into a plan, doesn't need to be this big, painful exercise. Again, definitely if you're not owner managed.
No one's going to look at it, are they?
No,
everyone's going to be like, this isn't a vision. This is like a how to do something. It's like a method script.
Definitely. And the best example, while we're on that topic, I could ever give is Martin Edwards, CEO of Julia's House.
Okay.
Very much, they are a charity, and a children's hospice charity, and clearly they are constantly looking at where they're going, what does good look like for them, and every time they reset their 3 or 5 year plan, he prepares or gets designed a proper infographic that shows all of the information on one page of A3, and it gets put on notice staff, notice boards, it gets shared with everybody, it's referred to constantly, and it gives that business, that charity, that real direction of travel. And that's what you want it to do, isn't it? And that's the thing. I think there is a step there, isn't there, between going from being a owner project to think about where we are, what we're doing, and then getting senior management, key individual buy-in to it and input before it's just communicated. Because I think that the worst thing you can do is a wham bam, thank you ma'am,
I think
type moment.
You're completely right. And I guess in terms of methodology of how you can get people to start thinking about whether they agree or don't agree with some of the decisions, and I know that the kind of concept of kind of traffic lights, are you a red here, are you an amber, are you a green? Right, in terms of, right, here's the question, what do you think about it? And it's not, as can happen, can't it, in these group meetings where people don't talk, they don't actually share what they really mean. Again, another really practical way I've seen do it is the kind of, we call it maybe 1, 2, 4 all, where the question is asked and you have to answer this, you have to answer it yourself. Yeah. Right? And then you turn, then the 2 bit is then me and you turn to each other and we say, okay, what have you written? What have you written? Yeah. Okay, what do you think about this? And then the 2 go to a 4. I mean, depending on how many people are in the room, but fundamentally you build up what you truly believe about it.
So a consensus view.
A consensus view of it. And fundamentally, as, I think people can probably associate with and probably have Tails, alignment in this vision is really important, because if people go, I've talked through it, I do believe in it, that's the way we're doing it. If you've got a manager or somebody that's helping you to implement it that kind of has been involved but truly doesn't believe in this, then it can be problematic.
Definitely got to get that buy-in. I love that 1, 2, 4 all. Right, I like that as a methodology. I've never used that. I might do that.
Rob Fanner gave it to me, if he's listening.
I like that. But at that point, you do need to share the plan, the methodology, and one that I advocate and talk to a lot when we're putting these strategic plans together and trying to set a kind of path for the future with businesses, is that aspect around an orbit diagram. It was the one I used at Inspire and did us really well, in that we knew where we were going. We kind of knew the numbers even about where we wanted to be. But the plan was about how do we make the business a better business, and therefore we put an orbit diagram together with this is where we want to be, in the middle, and then sort of 3 circles going out, year 1, year 2, year 3, and we had 8 segments on that covering things like infrastructure, our ideal client, being the employer of choice, our geographical reach, and we said, all right, in year 1 if we're going to hit that bigger goal, by year 1 we need to be here, year 2 here, year 3 here. And we shared that with everybody, and that's a 1-pager. And I think that's really powerful because it's visual, and if you present it and share it, then everybody bought into kind of where we were going. And even if they didn't really believe the middle part, the actual focus of this is where we're going to be in 3 or 5 years' time, they could buy into, well, I know I'm going to be here for the next 12 months, and I know I can contribute to those things, and I can help make a difference. Because I think there is a mistake there sometimes as business owners. We're in this for the long term. In this modern world, our team might only be with us, or view that they're going to be with us for 2 to 3 years of that journey.
Yeah.
But you've got to get them to buy in to know that they can contribute in that period of time.
I think obviously probably you're watching the Olympics at the moment. Yeah. If you're going to win a gold medal, right, it's all very well to say I'm going to win a gold medal in 4 years' time. Yeah. Right. But what you're going to have to do to win a gold medal in 4 years' time, you're going to have to get out of bed every day. Yeah. You're going to have to go training. You're going to have to train hard. You're going to have to eat well. And I guess that is slightly what you're describing there as well, isn't it? The kind of little things that happen to achieve the big goals.
Yeah. And then what I also love about the orbit diagram is it's a really easy way of feeding back. So we used, you mentioned the traffic light system, and in each of the segments we'd go, are we red, amber or green? On a lot of our things we were green, which was great, but on a few of the things we were all constantly red. And one of those was, for example, how do we use technology? How do we invest in technology fast enough to ensure that we can reduce our cost to serve? Yeah. And we were always red. But what this kind of methodology did was everybody knew where we were heading. Everybody knew where we were succeeding, but where our challenges were. And ultimately, when we did exit, it was to get more resource, more expertise, and more technology that we thought Azets could bring to us. So when we then shared, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it, everybody, not everybody liked it, but everybody understood the logic of it. And if we hadn't gone on that journey and shared the plan and communicated it and gave honest feedback, we'd have had a completely different reaction.
I mean, obviously it's something we're doing at Evolve as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
I mean, you've done that and said, this is red, green, amber, and actually we've managed to turn a lot of those reds green.
It gives you focus, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It gives you focus. And I think that coming back to kind of the benefits and why you really do this, it does give you that simplicity in your decision making. So when you are going, should we do this, should we not, are we on the right path, it kind of, people don't need to ask.
No,
you sort of just know whether you're doing the right thing or not, because you've already thought about some of these big picture questions, and you understand what the business is trying to achieve.
Definitely.
And it really helps.
So David, as we draw our conversation to a close, anything you'd like to say in conclusion? Anything else you covered in that blog which people can go onto your LinkedIn profile and connect with you if they're not already connected?
Absolutely.
But read the blog. What else would you add to conclude matters?
I would say to people to, go back to the original point about perfectionism versus, starting the process. Right. Don't be afraid.
Something's better than nothing.
If you're sat there thinking, do you know what? I actually don't know what good looks like. I'm not sure my senior leaders do. I'm not sure my team do. Then start the process, right? Don't be afraid of it. Obviously, please get in touch with Evolve if you'd like some help. But ultimately, we do see it as an indispensable document. It's crucial. It keeps people aligned. It keeps people motivated.
Otherwise, you're just going to drift into no man's land.
Exactly. Yeah.
So perfect.
Have a go. Get started.
Yeah. And there's resources online, isn't there?
Absolutely.
You can Google all those things, but clearly what we'd love them to do is reach out because we'd love to help them.
Yeah.
So thank you, David, for our conversation. A slightly different episode, but hopefully we're giving individuals some value in our conversation. And where can people go if they want to find out more about Evolve?
evolveadvisory.co.uk, resources, blogs, podcasts, not just this one. I'd love to speak to people and if we can help them.
Brilliant. Listeners, I hope you really have enjoyed that episode. It was something slightly different to our normal conversations with business owners, business leaders, but we're trying here to give you some value, to give you some thoughts, some practical things you can do to implement within your business. So I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Evolve to Succeed podcast. Thank you.